a Sapphire Running Zone podcast.
Hi everyone, this is Tim from the Sapphire Running Zone, and this is another in our Runner Stories podcast. And today we are joined by Ben in sunny Newcastle, and Ben has just completed the Great North Run. So Ben, welcome. Tell us why you took on this challenge, a little bit about your running background and why you chose the charity that you chose to fundraise for this event.
Hi, Tim. Yeah, thanks very much for having us on. Thanks for asking us to be here. So I basically got into running about 4 or 5 years ago, purely just for fitness and health reasons, I guess, just another sport to sort of take on. And as I've got better at it and got more competent with racing and things like that, I just thought I'd enter the Great North Run. And lo and behold, I got a ballot space, and then I thought, why not do it for charity? So obviously from then on, I was looking at charities that I could support. There was a few sort of thrown around, and they're all really worthy charities. A lot of people in my family have been affected by various things, Alzheimer's, cancer, and so we finally settled on the Silver Star unit at Oxford Hospitals. So that was where sort of the direction was heading for the Great North Run, and I suppose the rest is history, as they say.
So why Silver Star then? Why did you choose that particular charity?
So I think the main motivation was a personal one. So I was actually born 6 weeks premature, and when I'm originally from down south, so because I was born down there and my family had some sort of complications, my mum in particular had preeclampsia when she had me, and also unfortunately lost two babies prior to having me. So it seemed like a bit of a natural choice to sort of begin where it all started, and choose a really worthwhile charity such as them.
Absolutely. So we'll talk a little bit about your fundraising a little bit later on, but if we just start off with your training, talk us through your sort of training timeframes for this one, because you also did the 10K as well in July, didn't you? And that was presumably part of this training program.
Yeah, so I ended up doing about a 19-20 week training program in total. And obviously, when you sign up for the Great North Run, there's that offer to try and get you to do the Great North 10K. And I thought, actually, that sounds pretty good, as part of the training program. So yeah, I did a 19-20 week training program. And as a part of that, I did the Great North 10K in early July. So that was instrumental in my training for that. It definitely prepared me for the Great North Run. I think I was pretty good, or with my initial training, I was pretty good at doing 5-10K distances, but obviously moving on to a half marathon distance is no mean feat. So the Great North 10K was fine. I set a new PB in that, as well as completing all my daily training, getting up early before work, and doing some outdoor runs and treadmill runs, and really just using that 20-week program to get a head start in the training.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you did some 10K, some treadmill stuff. I'm a keen treadmill runner as well. So just give us a little bit of a flavor of how you integrated the treadmill into your training, particularly the long runs. What was the sort of longest you did on a treadmill?
I think the longest I did was probably about 16 or 18 kilometers on a treadmill. So I'm a big believer that trying to do the outdoor runs to sort of emulate the real life environment of your actual races is probably best. But I think it's easier on a treadmill, isn't it, to sort of keep an eye on the speed and the incline normally than what you would on an outdoor run. And I think it's great in terms of tempo runs and trying to increase your speed and your stamina on a treadmill as well. So it's great to incorporate both kinds if you can. I think a lot of people aren't particularly a fan of the treadmill runs, but I think they play an integral part really in that training process.
Yeah, absolutely right. So was that your longest run full stop, or did you do a longer run out?
No, I did 20 kilometers as my longest run outdoors, I think just shy of the half marathon distance. I was quite keen to make sure that the Great North Run was the full half marathon 21.1, and that would be like sort of my first and only half marathon distance. But I wanted to get up to that, but just shy of that as a part of my training. So about 20 kilometers was the furthest I went.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely spot on. Did the 10K course include any of the half marathon course, or was it completely different?
No, I think the first time I ever did the half marathon course, the Great North One, that was the only time I did that. The K was through the centre of Newcastle in a bit of a loop, so completely different. Obviously had the same sort of rolling type of ground, so it definitely prepared me for the Great North Run. But I think, yeah, it's something else. The Great North Run was completely different really to the 10K that I initially did.
But the good thing about it is, of course, you have practice at actually doing a busy run, didn't you, with a lot of people around? Because that is, it's not as big as the Great North Run, obviously, but it's still a big race. So you've got that whole big race atmosphere, which is so important.
Yeah, and I think that really motivates you when you're competing essentially against other people. I mean, everyone's there for their own reasons, and it's a very friendly environment doing all these big name runs. But I think for sure, if you're doing all this 20-week training, you're very much on your own with that training. It's you yourself, sort of your own motivation for it. Whereas when you then come to a race and there's potentially hundreds, thousands of other people around you, then sometimes that presents its own challenges because you're having to deal with the run with hundreds of other people around you rather than just yourself as you would be in your training.
Yeah, I think it comes as a bit of a shock to people, particularly if they haven't done a warm up race, suddenly turning up to a big event like the Great North, where you've got 60,000 people, something like that. And it's a bit of a shock to the system because, as you said, it's a very lonely sport when you're training. And it's so different when you turn up on race day and you've got all these tens of thousands of people. So I think doing a warm up event like you did is really, really important. So tell us how you felt the week leading up to the race itself then, because there's no expo, is there, as such for this one? You get your numbers posted out, don't you?
Yeah, so I think I received my bib number and various other information in the post a couple of weeks before, and that was really exciting. And I think, to be fair, my training plan took me right up until a couple of days before the Great North Run, and that was all really exciting. And I think I felt really prepared for the Great North Run at that point. I think it was the morning of really that the nerves started to kick in a little bit. And luckily that didn't take away from the excitement of the run and the sort of working of the day. That didn't impact me too much. I think the week leading up to the run, just because of various work commitments, I ended up just really tapering a lot of my training down. So the longest run I did was the week before. I think I did about a 5.5 kilometer run, as I said, a couple of days before the actual Great North Run. Apart from that, it was more functional strength training and sort of walking and just trying to really convalesce before the big day, really.
It's interesting because a lot of people we talked to before they do a race have had to travel and stay over in a hotel or, a holiday rental or something beforehand. So for you, obviously, you had the benefit of being at home and literally having to travel on race morning. So tell us what that was like. Well, tell us what the night before was like, what your routine was, what time you went to bed, what time you got up, that kind of thing.
Well, I'm usually an early to bed person anyway, just because of work and things. But I think it's definitely important to get a good night's sleep beforehand. I mean, to be honest, I didn't have a good night's sleep at all the night before, which I was really annoyed about. But I think that's the same for a lot of people prior to the Great North Run in any big race. So good night's sleep is definitely key. I think preparing all your kit beforehand. So if you've got like a running top for the charity, any of your trainers and anything else that you might need needs to be prepared beforehand. So you're just not running around that morning trying to sort everything out. So I made sure I was well prepared in that respect. And then the morning of was fine. Tried to eat a sort of small breakfast, even though I didn't feel like it. So some porridge oats, a banana, etc. And then make sure I left early for the Great North Run. We're quite lucky here. I live by the coast, so it's all well connected to Newcastle with the metro service. So you just hop on that and then go into town. But it was absolutely heaving on the metro trains. You couldn't move. So it was great to see everyone there and supporters were there. Obviously, runners going into town for the start of the run, but definitely very busy. My top tip is to leave as early as possible because, yeah, you never know what might happen on the way.
So did you get an allocated wave time that you had to go off at?
Yeah, so I think our allocated wave time, our start time was like 11:25 for the green wave. You had to be there by 11 o'clock, no later. I think there was a warm up at 10:35. So I think we aimed to get there about 10:45. And we did so, but obviously it takes quite a while then for you to filter down to the start line before you actually start. And I think there's quite often delays because of just the sheer amount of people. And then I think we started at about 11:15, 12:15, sorry. So that's not too bad. It was about 20 minutes after the said start time. And considering like the 65,000 people that were there, I don't think that was too bad in the end.
So was that sort of the middle wave pretty much or towards the front?
Yeah, I think it's the elite runners start off first, and then there's like an orange wave, then the green wave, then the pink wave. So it was sort of in the middle. And so, yeah, it wasn't too bad. I think if we were pink wave, it would have taken a little bit longer and it had been starting for quite a long time after that.
So talk us through the first half of the course then. I mean, I did it a few years ago, and obviously the bridge does tend to dominate all the images, doesn't it? It's quite something, isn't it? And did the red arrows go over?
Yeah, so just before I started, I was lucky enough to see the red arrows fly over. And then actually I saw them at the end. So I was lucky to see them at the start and the end. I think the first half of the race was my favourite almost. And I think everyone always says to pace yourself throughout the entire race if you can. And I don't think I did this consciously, but I think I was going at quite a good pace for the first half, just because I felt like I had the energy and felt like I was able to do so. And obviously, as you're crossing the Tyne Bridge, as you say, that's quite iconic. That's a real big sort of motivation for a lot of people to cross that. And I think the atmosphere is buzzing at that point. And then obviously, as you're heading into Gateshead, things start to pick up a little bit because the course is very much rolling. And a lot of it is sort of like major roads, and there's not much in the way of landmarks, I think, apart from the Tyne Bridge until you get to the coast. So the course itself can be quite challenging. I certainly found it quite challenging at times.
I mean, it's a good point you raise. I think that was something that struck me when I did it, is the fact that, it isn't chocked full of landmarks, is it? It is. There was a lot of dual carriageway, if I remember, and you've really got to be quite focused.
Absolutely. I mean, there are lots of crowd support throughout, but there are certainly periods where there aren't going to be crowds to sort of spur you on and support you. I think I was quite lucky in that respect that there were lots of people that turned out for this Great North Run. As they always do, people were really friendly and shouting your name because they can see it on your bib on the front to help motivate you. And lots of people are really kind, friendly, and they were offering sort of sweets and orange segments and lots of things like that to help keep you motivated and well hydrated. And keep those sort of sugar levels up as you're going. So we're really lucky in the Northeast that actually there are lots of local supporters that come out in their droves to help motivate runners, whether they have somebody that they know in the race or not. And I think that really adds to the sort of community spirit that sort of the Great North Run is well known for. But I agree there are certain points where you really do have to dig deep and sort of provide your own motivation for that, because the crowd support isn't always there.
Yeah, no, interesting. Remind me of the sort of gradients. So you use the word rolling, which I like. Undulating is another one, obviously. What was it like that first half? Remind us. I mean, it's not seriously steep hills, but it's never flat, is it really?
No, I think it surprised me actually never doing the route as a part of my training. I think you cross the Tyne Bridge and it sort of goes up into Gateshead straight away. And I think then for me anyway, any form of when you get to sort of the summit of whatever part you're running on, you can almost see light at the end of the tunnel where you're sort of going down, or it sort of flattens out a bit. But as soon as you see that, another hill sort of follows. That tended to be the case throughout. So definitely a rolling gradient. It's not by no means flat, and it's not the worst sort of course, I suppose, for hills or anything like that. It's not particularly steep, but it certainly does challenge it, particularly when you go beyond the halfway mark. I found when you're really having to dig deep, it can be quite a challenge at that point, and you really sort of struggle. And I didn't think I was going to be somebody who would need to sort of eat sweets and things on the way around, but I definitely took my fair share of sweets and things off of the crowds as I went round, just to keep the sugar levels up.
And what was the race nutrition like? Did you, there was plenty of water, and were there energy drinks and so on the way around?
It's really well organised as it is every year, and so there are definitely water stations throughout. But I think I got to a point where like water wasn't enough. For whatever reason, I hadn't trained with nutrition stuff in mind. I'm that sort of runner that does like to be as light as possible, so I don't like to carry lots of things with me. I have a running vest, and I have quite a bit of water beforehand, and you might carry a bag of sweets or something. But I didn't really plan to have very much on the way round. But I think, judging by the rolling nature of the course and obviously the length of it, I definitely relied on the support of other people. So I don't think there was energy drinks, but supporters did supply things like energy drinks, or, as I say, bag of sweets or orange segments, or nutritional supplements on the way round. So I think if anyone's considering doing it, and you're not used to maybe having that sort of nutritional supplement on the way around, at least people will bring you things when you're running around. So if you forget or you don't tend to train with that, then you can always rely on the supporters to provide that for you.
And what was the second half of the course like then? I mean, obviously runners have thinned out a little bit, so you got more road to work with, but what about the gradient at that point?
I think it was very much the same, very much, a mixture, some hills and some flatter moments. I think as you're approaching three quarters of the way round, it's definitely like a steady incline, I would say. Um, and I think that's where your motivation really has to kick in. I think that's when I needed the sweets and things the most. I think, admittedly, I had to walk a little bit, especially when I was eating and drinking and stuff, just to get that energy back in. But you do find the motivation, you do dig deep, and I think the markers along the way do help a lot as well. I think for some people they might put them off, but I really found it helpful knowing how far you'd come. You'd almost run the majority of the entire course. You had less to run than what you already had done. So I think that was quite helpful in keeping the motivation and the spirits high. The course was very much the same as I say, but I think it becomes harder because you're more fatigued at that point.
And what about the number of runners on the course then? Was it always comfortable running, or I mean, there weren't too many that you were sort of bumping shoulders almost, were there?
I think it happened a couple of times, unfortunately, but I think again people are getting more tired and then slowing up, or not necessarily moving to the side, and I think that poses its own issues. I think the course itself is quite good when it's quite a wide, sort of road or path for you to run on. That's thought about, and that's quite a good thing for a lot of runners. I think sometimes it does narrow a little bit as well, and that's when you run into some difficulty because there isn't that sort of width for you to overtake people. So you do have to be mindful of that. And I think sometimes when you're giving it your best shot and you're trying to run past people, that doesn't always allow if you can't actually run rounds. Just to be mindful of that if anyone's considering doing that. I suppose it's like any race, isn't it? There's going to be moments where you're able to get around people and the course allows it, and then other times not so much. But I didn't find that it was much of an issue really for the majority of the course.
Talk us through your emotions as you headed into South Shields.
Yeah, I think what everyone had always warned me about, people that have previously done the Great North Run had said, don't necessarily run straight. If you've got the energy, don't think that that's it. When you see the sea, don't think that that's it. And then, you're done, because once you go up the hill and down and then you turn sort of like the last corner, you do have quite a way to go, and almost the finish line does sort of run away from you. So I did bear that in mind. But I think when you do see the sea, you sort of know that you are coming towards the end. And as you turn the final corner, the final straight is packed with supporters and lots of people. And I did have friends and family there that were there to support me at sort of the 400-meter to go mark. So that was really good to spur me on motivational wise. And I think then you really dig deep and just sort of plow on to the finish line at that point. But I think the atmosphere is electric. There's definitely that buzz like there was at the start and crossing the Tyne Bridge at that point. So I think if you can get to that point with about, a mile or so to go, then I think you're probably onto a winner there.
Yeah, indeed. It's a great location for the finish. And obviously you've got so many marquees and stuff at the finish, haven't you? A lot of charity support. Yeah, it's a great atmosphere there. There really is. So look, you've done an amazing job with your fundraising. I think a lot of people that run Great North, £500 is a real result. And you're on over 800 at the moment.
Well, I was surprised really, because I think initially in my head I had a target of £1,000 just as a nice rounded figure. I probably thought at the initial stages that was quite an ambitious target, and that's probably more than most people would be able to raise. But when I set my target for £500 and then it's gone sort of beyond that, I was actually really shocked. And that's actually down to all the supporters that have managed to donate. So friends, family, work colleagues, and otherwise people across social media. I couldn't have been able to do it without their support. So a lot of it is sort of, social media, as I say, sort of word of mouth, and me actually going around to sort of canvas for support, the main methods of how I've been able to fundraise that amount of money. I think now that I've got to the sort of past the £800 mark, I think you do have that sort of internal motivation to try and get to that £1,000 now. Yes, hopefully with a little bit more support, I can reach that £1,000 target. That would be absolutely ideal. And as I say, it's such a worthwhile charity. So, as I say, I've got a lot of personal sort of, affiliations with it, and it's affected my family and I wouldn't be here without them, really. So it's such a worthy charity that they really would deserve sort of £1,000 if I could get to that amount of money.
Yeah, it's quite a motivator when you say that, isn't it? I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this charity. I mean, it's not a lot of people doing the Great North Run would be able to say that. So I think, yeah, if you're able to push on and get 1,000, that's amazing. Because I mean, for the charity, it's fantastic because you were one of the lucky ones to get in through the ballot. The charity's not had to buy your entry, which is the case in a lot of instances, not for this charity, but for many others. So it really is, it's fantastic for them that you've done what you've done. Hopefully we can get this podcast done and out to your friends and family, and that might give you that extra little push. You never know, because it's not far now to 1,000. I think there's always that period, isn't there, around the race where numbers go up, and you raised sort of £250 over race weekend, which was tremendous. And I think you've done a really good job being able to get that kind of number without having done any kind of event or, some people do raffles and auctions and all that kind of stuff. But you basically did the bulk of yours through setting up the fundraising page and then getting that link sent out to friends and family.
Yeah, pretty much. I think, as I say, social media is such a wonderful thing nowadays. You can reach such a big audience, a wider audience. And I think that's been instrumental in fundraising that amount. I think that the kindness and generosity of people who I know and don't know so well has been fantastic. And I would implore anyone, I think, who is considering doing something like the Great North Run, even if you do get in with a ballot place, to do it for charity, because I thought, well, I'm doing it anyway, so why not support a charity if you can and you're able to do that? Then I think it's definitely the right thing to do.
I totally agree. I mean, there will be thousands that would have done it for charity, particularly on, when they've got a guaranteed entry through a charity, but not many people like you with a ballot entry do raise money. And it is so important because, as you said, with social media, the ease of setting up a fundraising page, sending it out to your friends, even if you raise £200 or £300, it's just great for the charities because it's basically all monies that they can then put into research and support, which is so, so important. So for you then, the big question is, what's next? Are you chomping at the bit for a marathon?
I wouldn't put it quite like that. I think the first couple of days where, the legs are aching and you're absolutely exhausted, I think you're like, never again. But I think since then, reflecting on my time doing the Great North Run, I probably would consider doing another half marathon again. I mean, considering that I was only been into my running the last 4 or 5 years, if you'd said to me 5 years ago, would you be doing a half marathon? I would say absolutely not. So I'd never say never. And I've come this far. A marathon might be a bit of a stretch at this point, but I think, like you say, the training that you do for any race, you just sort of implement that mindset, that motivation, put the effort and the training in, and then, sort of the sky's the limit, really. Never say never and watch this space, really.
So one thing I haven't asked you is, what time did you do?
I did it in about 2 hours, 13 minutes,
Good.
I think.
And was that sort of what you were expecting?
Yeah, hopefully. I think I would have liked to have done it in under 2 hours. And I think I was pretty harsh on myself, in terms of, because I didn't need to have a time in mind or a particular goal in mind. I think with my training program, I was aiming for around 2 hours anyway. And considering the rolling nature of the course and it being my first half marathon, I'm more than happy with 2 hours 13. And obviously, if I was lucky enough to be able to do it again and hopefully fundraise some more money for charity in the future, then by all means, I'd be looking to beat that and get a personal best of hopefully under 2 hours.
Well, that should be definitely your goal. Under 2 hours in the next one, which could be in, I don't know, a couple of months' time, maybe. There's so many half marathons around now. You've got absolutely no excuse not to be going under 2 hours by Christmas, I think we should say.
Let's see. I guess that might be a bit ambitious, but we'll see what happens.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, Ben, and let's do what we can to get you over the 1,000 mark. And congratulations on doing the Great North Run.
Thank you very much. Yeah, if anyone would like to donate and hopefully get into that £1,000 mark, you can donate on my Just Giving page. But yes, thanks Tim for having us on. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this Sapphire Running Zone podcast. Keep checking back as we have lots more podcasts coming soon.